You were never ordinary, even if they tried to convince you otherwise. Even if the world labeled you as too sensitive, too emotional, too much. But what they missed, what even you sometimes forget, is that your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a gift, a deep and ancient power that connects you to what others cannot see, feel, or process. You walk into rooms and feel the atmosphere before anyone speaks. You sense sadness behind a smile. You detect unspoken pain in a perfectly timed laugh. You don't just hear words, you absorb energy. You don't just listen, you feel. This is what makes you an empath, but it's also what makes you vulnerable. CARL Jung warned us not everyone who comes close to the light is looking to heal. Some are looking to feed, and the brighter your energy shines, the more invisible predators you attract. Because when you're an empath, your light becomes a beacon, and that beacon draws in the lost, the wounded, and sometimes the dangerous. You've likely experienced it already. You meet someone who instantly feels like they've known you forever. They open up quickly. They tell you their traumas, their heartbreaks, their stories of being misunderstood, and without even realizing it, you begin to carry their pain as if it were your own. You believe you're helping. You think, if I love them enough, maybe they'll heal. If I'm patient, maybe they'll change. If I hold space, maybe they'll finally feel seen. But time passes, and they don't heal. They don't change. They don't grow. You do. You grow tired. You grow anxious. You grow distant from yourself. You begin to lose your spark, your clarity, your sense of self. This is the silent wound of the empath. You don't just give love, you give yourself. And sometimes, you give so much that you disappear. Jung's warning was never meant to frighten you. It was meant to wake you up. Because when the unconscious drives your compassion, it becomes a trap. You fall into dynamics where you love those who cannot return it. You rescue those who do not want to be saved. You give second, third, and fourth chances to people who never earned the first. And slowly, your empathy becomes a prison. A role you didn't agree to. A script you never wrote. A story that drains your light, one chapter at a time. You may think, you're just being kind. But what if your kindness is being exploited? What if the very thing that makes you beautiful is also what keeps you in cycles of pain? This is the danger Jung saw in unintegrated empathy, because without boundaries, your gift becomes self-destruction. Let's be clear. Being an empath does not mean tolerating disrespect. It does not mean making excuses for emotional immaturity. It does not mean absorbing pain that isn't yours. To hold. It means feeling deeply, but also knowing where you end and where others begin. Jung taught that to individuate, to truly become yourself, you must confront your shadow, your unconscious, your deep motives. So let's go deeper. Why do you keep attracting people who take more than they give? Why do you feel responsible for other people's healing? Why do you ignore red flags and call it compassion? These are not coincidences, they are patterns. And patterns come from the unconscious. Somewhere inside you, there may be a part that believes you must earn love through suffering. That if you sacrifice enough, maybe, just maybe, someone will finally stay. But Jung would ask you, whose wound is that? Is it really yours? Or are you repeating a script written by your mother's sadness, your father's absence, your childhood silence? Empaths often carry ancestral grief. They become emotional sponges, not just for those around them, but for entire generations. And until you bring that to the light, it will keep directing your life, and you will keep calling it fate. Let's pause for a moment. Think about the relationships you've had, not just romantic ones, but friends, family, colleagues. How many of them left you feeling seen? And how many left you feeling used? How many times did you walk away wondering why you always give more than you get? The truth is, your heart is sacred, but not everyone deserves access to it. You don't need to be everything for everyone. You don't need to apologize for saying no. You don't need to explain why your soul is tired. Jung believed that healing begins the moment you reclaim your projection. And for empaths, that projection is often, I can fix this. I can hold this. I can carry them. But it's not your job to fix. It's not your role to be the emotional caretaker of the world. Your job is to be you, whole, grounded, present. Because when you finally say, enough, you don't become cold, you become clear. You begin to see who's been feeding on your light, and who's been helping you shine. Empaths are not here to be martyrs. They are here to be mirrors, to reflect truth, not to lose themselves in someone else's illusion. And that's Jung's final warning. If you don't bring consciousness to your empathy, it will be weaponized against you. Not because people are evil, but because unconsciousness always seeks energy, and yours is abundant. You must learn to protect your gift, to honor your boundaries, to recognize when your light is being cherished and when it's being consumed, and above all, to understand that your sensitivity is not a curse, it's a compass, but only if you listen to it. So today, pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, where have I been giving my light to someone who cannot hold it? Where have I mistaken survival patterns for love? Where have I sacrificed myself on the altar of someone else's potential? This is not about blame. This is about awakening. Because when you awaken, you stop leaking energy. You stop chasing people who never choose you. You stop explaining your worth. You stop negotiating your value. And instead, you begin to protect your light as the sacred flame it truly is. Let this be your reminder. You don't have to prove anything to be loved. You don't have to fix people to be worthy. You don't have to stay where your soul is shrinking. Your empathy is your gift, but your boundaries, they are your power. When those two meet, you become unstoppable, and no one can feed on your light again. Before we continue, remember this: there's a reason your relationships reflect your inner patterns. If you're ready to decode them and finally reclaim your power, start with the Jung method. The link is pinned in the first comment. Now, let's go deeper. You thought they loved you. You thought they saw you. You thought that by being the safe space, the calm presence, the loyal one, you would finally be enough for someone to stay. But the truth is harder, because many didn't stay, and some who did only stayed to feed. This is the most painful realization for any empath, that what you thought was love was sometimes just need, that what you thought was connection was a transaction, that someone was only there because you let them drink from your soul, and maybe you told yourself it was mutual. That love is about giving, that relationships are about sacrifice. But now, in the silence they left behind, you realize something else. You were giving to survive, not to love. You were trying to earn your place in someone's life, trying to be good enough, soft enough, understanding enough, until they finally chose you. But CARL Jung would say this: you weren't in love with them. You were in love with the part of you that still needed to be chosen, that child within you, that wounded version of you who never felt truly seen, that unconscious fragment hiding in the shadows, still waiting for someone to say, "You're not too much, I choose you." That is why you stayed. That is why you tolerated emotional starvation. Because your empathy wasn't just compassion, it was hope. Hope that if you could give enough, someone would finally fill what was empty inside you. But here's the truth: you are not the healer of those who refuse to heal. You are not the shelter for those who destroy every safe place they enter. You are not the emotional parent of broken adults. You are light, and that light is not meant to be dimmed in the name of love. Jung believed that every act of overgiving, every unconscious sacrifice, is a sign that your inner child is still trying to prove her worth. So let's be honest. You've stayed in relationships that drained you. You've made excuses for toxic behavior. You've held people who dropped you the moment you needed to be held. And you've done it all because you told yourself, this is what love looks like. But it's not. That's what wounding looks like. That's what trauma repetition looks like. That's what emotional abandonment disguised as loyalty looks like. And you're not here to live in that loop anymore. You're here to awaken. You're here to stop bleeding for people who never bring you a bandage. You're here to stop apologizing for needing what you give so freely: safety, presence, tenderness, consistency. You're not too much for wanting that. You're too awake to keep pretending you don't. The empath's journey is not about becoming harder. It's about becoming clearer. Clearer about what is yours to carry and what never was. Clearer about who gets access to your soul and who never earned it. Clearer about what love really means and what it absolutely does not mean. Love is not giving until you're empty. Love is not carrying someone's healing while they sabotage your peace. Love is not ignoring your needs to preserve someone else's comfort. That's codependency. That's self-abandonment. That's the unconscious in motion. CARL Jung taught that what we deny in ourselves shows up in our relationships. So ask yourself, what part of me believes I must suffer to be loved? What part of me believes my boundaries make me unkind? What part of me still thinks I have to earn affection? Because the people who feed on your light, they are only mirroring the part of you that's still unsure whether your light deserves to exist. They sense the crack, the space where you doubt your worth. And through that crack, they enter, not because you're weak, but because you are open. And openness without discernment is a dangerous thing. That is Jung's final warning to EMPA. Empathy must be conscious. It must be integrated. It must be protected. Because if it isn't, it becomes your undoing. You begin to confuse guilt with responsibility. You begin to accept pain as part of connection. You begin to believe that losing yourself is the cost of being loved. But here's the truth you've always known. Real love expands you. It doesn't shrink you. Real love speaks your name with reverence, not as a plea for rescue. Real love meets your needs without making you feel like a burden. Real love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It invites you to return. And if that's not what you've been receiving, then you're not loved, you're used. That's a hard truth, but it's also your freedom. Because once you see it, you stop playing small. You stop confusing your ability to endure with a reason to stay. You stop explaining why you need what you need, and you start walking away. You walk away from half-love, from emotional crumbs, from people who only show up when they're hungry for your light. You walk away, not because you're bitter, but because you've finally remembered who you are. You are not the fixer. You are not the therapist. You are not the energetic landfill. For people who refuse to evolve, you are an empath. Yes, but first, you are human. You are worthy of being held, of being seen, of being chosen without having to bleed for it. So now, you choose you. You choose your peace over their drama, your clarity over their chaos, your healing over their dysfunction. And in doing so, you reclaim your light, not to give it away to just anyone, but to live by it, to shine with it, to attract those who see it and say, I don't want to feed on that. I want to honor it, because those people exist. But they only find you when you stop dimming your radiance for the ones who never could hold it. This is your invitation to rise, not as a savior, not as a martyr, not as someone who needs to prove anything to be loved, but as someone who finally understands, my empathy is sacred, and anyone who treats it as a resource no longer has access to it. You don't need to explain your light. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to keep leaking energy into people who never see you. You only need one thing now, to remember your worth and protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. This is not the end of your softness. This is the beginning of your strength.